peace and blessings, my family. We back again for another brainstorming session. I'm your host, Delano Bruton, head chief specialist for mastering our business. And we're only here for one thing, man. We're only here to master our business, and unplug from the matrix, at the end of the day. So I'm super excited. As you guys know, we always have a treat for you guys. We always have another special guest for you guys. And yeah, we got another special guest for you guys. But before we dive in, I definitely got to say I'm just super overwhelmed from all of the support, all of the love we've been just getting shown over the past few years. It's been a wonderful journey, just seeing the progress. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Getting the feedback from our brainstorming sessions, and just getting the feedback from our members. So I definitely got to shout out all of our members, all of our mentors, all of our advisors, all of our affiliate partners, and of course everybody that's in our Discord community. Man, we've been sharing a lot of gems as well, and just growing, growing by the week. Speaking of that, if you haven't joined our Discord just yet, make sure you guys scan the barcode on the screen, or you can just tap the link in our bio. It'll bring you right in. We love to welcome you in, and just have you. We love partnering up and collabing with like-minded individuals, and just making sure that we sharing gems and figuring out different solutions, and just being great at the end of the day. Um, Speaking of being great as well, definitely make sure you guys scan the barcode at the bottom of the screen. That's going to actually take you to our business funding readiness audit. And that's just, if you want to see if you have any gaps in your business, if you want to see how you can actually get in position to get funded at the end of the day, and figure out how we can fill some of these gaps. We probably did 33, 34 audits now in the last month. And, it's always room for improvement at the end of the day. I don't care how long you've been in business, what industry you're in. There's always room for improvement. It's always some gaps we have to fill. And that's just part of the journey. I think that's the most exciting part of just being an entrepreneur. I know throughout my journey, I've had to, remaster, go back to the drawing board, figure out, new ways to get ahead. And that's just part of the journey, you guys. So, hey, now we made it a little easier for you guys. All you got to do is scan the barcode, and it'll take you, straight to our audit. So it take about 60 seconds to complete. It's only 12 questions, and I promise you, it's gonna work. It's gonna make a huge difference at the end of the day. So make sure you guys get that done. On top of that, if you're live with us, make sure you guys blow that chat up and type ready. And also, if you're in our Discord, definitely make sure you guys introduce yourself as soon as you come into the Discord. Post your social medias, post your websites. You never know who may want to actually connect with you, and who may need to connect with you at the end of the day, and who you may need to connect with. It's all about connecting the dots, and moving as a village. I love, when I say I just love our village at the end of the day. We have a lot of great people within our village, and that's what it's all about. Getting through this thing. We all on the same rock, you guys, at the end of the day. So, we have to move, together. So, speaking of moving together, without further ado, we have a special guest on today. I'm super excited. We have Brandon on. What's going on, Brandon? What's going on?
Hey, Delano, good to see you. Good to be here. Yeah,
Man,
really
I'm glad that you just took out the time. I know our schedules can get super hectic. So I always respect when people, take out the time to drop some gems and just give back to the community, man. So I definitely want to give you your flowers on that. For the people that don't know, for the people that's under a rock, let the people know who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah. So my name is Brandon Belk, and I basically I help empower entrepreneurs and really sovereign-minded individuals to become their own banker, cut out the middleman of the institutions, and really empower yourselves to maximize the growth potential while also protecting what matters most.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So let's hop right into it. I love to start off with the how because a lot of people join our brainstorming sessions and join our program. Because they're missing that how. They know what they want to do. They have the passion already. They just need those extra gems. So for somebody who's stuck in the hustle phase, what's the first system they need to really install to move like a actual mobile?
Yeah, the first thing is just, having a clear understanding of your financial infrastructure. It's taking a look under the hood, taking inventory, because a lot of us, may have, things all over the place. We may have a checking account, multiple checking accounts and multiple banks, and maybe a savings account, and maybe a CD, and maybe a mutual fund, and maybe, an investment account. And so it's very easy as we, get caught up in building our business, and we're just kind of, doing the good in front of us, that sometimes those things can get scattered and not communicate inside of a like a holistic system. And so to really streamline your financial sovereignty, there's got to be a streamlined system.
I love that. I love that. I definitely see that all the time where, business owners have, they just have a messy back office. They have a little bit of everything going everywhere. They mix in they business with their personal. And that's something that we talk about all the time. You have to separate those things because that's really, again, that's part of the journey for sure. In your industry, what's one big common lie that's usually told to entrepreneurs?
Well, in my industry, I would say, well, I'll answer the question, but it'll probably open up the door to some much needed context. And so, but I would say the biggest lie is that um, you have to, get a 401k, stow money away every year. Don't touch that money until you're too old to enjoy it. That's typically how that goes. And so, whether that's a 401k at someone's, with someone's employer, or a, independent, IRA. Yeah, just this lie that we have to, in order to enjoy our life, we have to spend our entire life or the majority of our life toiling away for the system, and essentially renting money as opposed to, like I said, owning your own system.
Oh, that's powerful. Renting money. Expand on that a little bit. Like, what does that look like, and what does owning your own system looks like? Because I love that renting money.
Yeah, yeah. So renting money. I mean, if you think about, well, a lot of us aren't taught exactly how banks operate when we're in school, even for those that are, financially savvy. So the way traditional banking works, it's called fractionalized banking, and so every dollar that you put into your bank account gets lent out 10 times over, right? So the money is that you deposit at the bank is not actually on the bank. It becomes collateral for their business venture, right? And for them to generate a profit. And so if you look at even on cash, on physical cash, you'll notice that it says uh, Federal Reserve note. And the word note, as a financial term, actually means debt, right? So it is a debt note. It is an IOU, right? So you give your money to the banks, you receive an IOU, and you are renting that money. That is not your money. It says payable to the Federal Reserve. And so we are leasing, you could say rent, you could say, maybe leasing is a better term, leasing the ability to commerce in their system that they own and they generate yield from.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So, what are some ways around this? If you somebody like us that really want to unplug from the matrix, unplug from the system, and really own our assets, own our and really become truly financially free. What does that looks like? What are some of the steps that we need to take?
Yeah, yeah. So, really, just to paint a clearer picture here, the biggest kind of aha moment that I had, or kind of that click for most people, is realizing that they're sitting, their money's lazy, right? Because we just don't know what to do with it. We go to the bank out of convenience, and so that money typically is just sitting in like a traditional savings or business checking account, and that actually creates a technical leak, right? An opportunity leak, a profit leak, a yield leak, however you want to look at it. And so like I mentioned earlier, traditional banking utilizes the fractional reserve system, and so it relies on you being a customer of the bank and not the owner. And so the owner of the bank actually gets to collateralize that deposit, like I mentioned a minute ago. And so, really, the most empowering question that everyone with this gnosis, this new wisdom, gets to ask themselves is, is it going to be you, or is it going to be the institution? Who's going to own the banking system in your life? And so, what we want to do is move from wealth capturing, which is, I mean, that's always step one, right? Cash flow, right? No matter what your business is, starts with healthy cash flow, and then it becomes a matter of like, how do we manage that? How do we best leverage that cash flow, or utilize that cash flow? So moving from wealth capture to wealth creation by installing a like what I call a private banking infrastructure. If anybody's familiar with the book "What Would the Rockefellers Do," it's a famous story about the Rockefeller family, and it highlights the difference between their strategy and the Vanderbilts. So two very wealthy families, at the turn of the 19th century or 20th century, and what ended up happening past their peak is very different because of the system that they utilized. So the Vanderbilt family, within 3 generations, lost everything, right? And they had to sell off a majority of their assets to fund future generations. Rockefellers actually created a money flywheel system. They created their own banking system that self replenishes and generates every generation that passes. And so that's kind of the nature of what we're doing. And the first thing to fix there is what I call the junk drawer, right? It's like I mentioned earlier, that uncoordinated collection of financial products that aren't talking to each other, and then organizing that through the lens of protection, savings, and growth into just a comprehensive, coordinated system where every dollar does multiple jobs. That's really the simple thing, is that we want to make sure that every dollar that we receive in cash flow performs multiple jobs and not just separately, right? So that way we can really leverage it to the fullest.
That's super powerful. Hey, if you live right now, drop a money bag in the chat or a fire sign or something, because he just dropping so many gems on you guys for sure, and it's super valuable. Um, Real quick, you spoke on, you know, well, we had a, before we spoke, you spoke on trust funds. Can you expound on that and why that's important? Especially when you're an entrepreneur.
Absolutely, yeah. So trusts are definitely a key part of that Rockefeller method. But it starts. So really, you have the trust as the family infrastructure, right? So that could be that's what's going to create cohesion between generations, or on a multi generational scale. And so that's similar kind of. I would say a different, or alternative to like a corporation, right? A corporation, or including LLCs, S corp, C corp, that sort of thing. They actually don't have any constitutional rights. Corporations do not, because they're not a person. And so the root word of corporation is corpse. It's dead. So it's not living, right? And it's a you're also, you pay a fee, right, to register your LLC. You pay a fee. It's a licensing fee to the state, to the federal government. And so what a trust does, a trust is actually, we have a constitutional right to contract. And so trust structures are just private contracts that, it's like your own little private constitution. You determine the laws, how it's going to, how your family's going to, your lineage is going to operate, how each family member participates in that. So it's like a legacy plan, I should say, that can also function as a business component as well. And and then underneath that, really, when I talk about the private bank or owning the system, it creates this image of something of an alternative to a bank account, right? That's kind of where people go. Where do we actually store the money? If not in a bank account, how do we where do we store it that gives us that sovereignty, right, and that control and leverage? And the secret to that, and this also goes back to the Rockefeller method, is a very unique form of whole life insurance. And so it's technically it is whole life insurance, but it's the way it's designed is actually backwards. It's designed to minimize the death benefit that life insurance gives you, because that's not really the point of this tool, right? And so we want to maximize the amount of cash value. So typically, whole life comes with two parts, and that's death benefit to protect you as the asset and your income, future income, but then also the cash value is like a savings account baked inside of that structure. And so the way we like to formulate this is to really do, like I mentioned, have the majority of the money going into the policy or into the contract builds up in this cash value savings that pays a dividend. So you get compound growth, and also you have the ability to collateralize that cash value, right? And so what this does when you structure a whole life policy this way, it basically you create your net worth, right? You create an asset. It is an asset. It's a contract with guaranteed returns, guaranteed compound growth, and that's something that's missing with the bank. When you deposit money in a bank, they are not contractually obligated to pay you a yield or to keep that at a certain, to kind of schedule that out. And so there's those contractual guarantees that are really important to protecting your wealth, because we all know that banks can collapse, right, at the first sign of fragile economy, and so we want to make sure that we're not liable there and dependent on what little FDIC insurance may be available in that world. And so that's step one. You basically you're storing as cash flow comes in, you take that excess capital and you put it in the holding tank, right? So you think of this policy as a holding tank for excess capital, a savings vehicle, right? Just like you would with a savings account or money market account. But in this world, right, it's much more safe, much more secure, and you're getting that guaranteed return. But the coolest thing, again, going back to collateralizing, is I mentioned I called this the and asset, right? So you save the money and it compounds and you can leverage it, right? You can have access to that liquidity through policy loans and be able to use that to invest in your business, to invest in real estate, buy businesses, right? And think of it as an opportunity fund. And so that's what we want. We want to have our cake and eat it too. We want it to be secure, safe in a vault, growing and compounding, and then also have access to that without spending it, right? Using the money without withdrawing the money. And that's my favorite hack right there.
I love it. I love it. Okay, okay. So opportunity fund. I love that. I love that. So real quick, because I over the years, this is something that I, been really thinking about. You got me wanting to go take my money out the bank right now. But, you know, for somebody that's just starting off, what is the best way to start a life insurance policy? Because I see a lot of people, I've known a lot of people who sell life insurance policies, which, I just looked at it as like a middleman type situation. But how does that, how do you kind of, is there a way to cut out the middleman and start a policy? If so, what's the steps for that?
Yeah, insurance. It's a complicated industry, and it has a lot of variety in it, and a lot of different connotations. People, there's different styles. I would say the industry as a whole, it is hard to trust who to work with there. So you want to make sure, and also, as I mentioned, this strategy is very niche. It's not well known amongst kind of your run of the mill insurance agents. This is more of a high level strategy, and so you really want to stress test who you're working with. The short answer to your question is there's no way to really bypass it, because you're going to have to have someone that's licensed and educated to be able to structure this with you, to set this up properly with all the key moving parts in order to make sure that it's uniquely designed for your vision, right, and for your business and for your needs. And so you do want to make sure to partner with someone that you can trust and that you want to make sure is very knowledgeable on this particular type of structure. And so this reminds me of that first question you brought up, Delano, which is, what are some of the biggest myths or traps of this industry towards towards the public, right? And unfortunately, insurance agents are paid on commission, right? So sometimes they can market products that are not going to be aligned with the client's goals, right? And so the way that we're talking about structuring this is actually going to pay the least amount of commission. And so most insurance agents are negatively incentivized to set the policy up in this way. And that again creates more complication in trusting who you're working with. It's also why there's a type of insurance called IUL, it's Index Universal Life. And that's usually what most people come across in regards to the infinite banking, private banking strategy. It's through the lens of an IUL, and the IUL is very different from whole life. So if anybody listening to this conversation comes across, or has an IUL policy or anything like that, it's very critical that you meet with someone like myself, for example, that can kind of compare and contrast IUL to whole life, because with IUL you do not have the same guarantees. It's tied to the market, to options trading, and so if those aren't designed, most of the ways in which those are designed, you can actually end up losing money. And so, but those pay a higher commission, and so a lot of people in the industry will market the IULs because it pays a higher commission and um, can leave the client in a hard situation years down the road. And so that's another thing to watch out for.
Yeah, it's tough. I talk about this all the time. The trust factor, now is super shaky, and I think that's one of the best parts about the community that we're building with the mob, because we have to bring that trust factor back. We can't stay like that, and sometimes you have to kind of close off your circle, and be selective on who you have around you. I think that's with any industry, and just with life in general, you have to really filter out, the good and the bad. So it's super hard, and that's why I asked that question about what's the biggest lie in the industry, because we have to know these things. We have to know what's going on, behind closed doors. That and especially with life insurance, that's a a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions when it comes to that. And I think that's why a lot of people don't really look into it, because the first thing, especially in our community, is you look at it as like, oh, we don't want to talk about death. We're not looking at it as an opportunity fund. I love that. So I think that's super. I think that was probably the biggest gem that you dropped so far, for sure. So we focus on higher risk positioning, to get businesses bankable. From your seat, what is the one high risk mistake you see most entrepreneurs making that keeps them from scaling?
I would say the biggest risk is time to is sense of urgency or lack thereof. I think it's just kind of putting out fires as we go along as entrepreneurs, when we're especially in the early days of scaling our business, and not paying ourselves first, right? You kind of get into a trap of spending money to scale. You get caught, right, trying this new tool, this new consultant, or hiring more, and instead of again paying ourselves first, because again that cash flow is what's going to ultimately build the foundation of any solid structure or business, and then being able to leverage that again through the private banking model in order to do all of the scaling expenses, right? Again, we want to keep our money and use it at the same time, right? And so I think the biggest trap that bootstrap entrepreneurs run into is they're very limited on funds and maybe they don't have business credit built up yet, or they haven't contacted with you yet, and so um, they're kind of having to choose. Well, what job does my little bit of money kind of fulfill? What job do these dollars do? And like I said earlier, we want to show them how to have those dollars do multiple jobs, right? So that we can scale faster and more securely.
I love that. I love that. So, you know, like you said, sometimes we bump our heads. Sometimes we just don't know certain things. What really got you into, what? How did this knowledge come across you? How did you come across, this knowledge that and these gems that you've given us? And what was that? What was that time? What is that? What does that look like when you just realizing that switch flip for you?
Well, I'm always a student, so and my interests have always been money and food, and so several key books have been super influential in my journey. I've been in the financial industry since 2010, and then also had a farm to freezer ice cream business in the midst of that as well. And so again, food and money, but those key books, especially in regards to the strategy that I've been talking about here today, is as I mentioned, What Would the Rockefellers Do? That's by author Garrett Gunderson. Really, really smart individual. He's also got a podcast and multiple books. I think he also wrote Killing the Sacred Cows. That was another, I think, his first bestseller. But yeah, what would the Rockefellers do? And that goes into this trust structure and how that weaves into this insurance strategy as well. Because that's where it really gets exciting, is once you start kind of like stacking these different money flywheels all together. And we can dig into that a little bit later as well when we go under the hood. But yeah, so what would the Rockefellers do? And then the other key one was the And Asset by Caleb Williams. So Caleb Williams is the author of the book And Asset. He explains that kind of philosophy really, really well too, where it does this and that, right? It's not an investment tool. It's not just an insurance policy. It's this and that, right? And then I guess the OG, kind of the Bible of this strategy, would be Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. And that's kind of the dense old school version, if you want to start there. But yeah, I like Caleb Wilson's And Asset. I've read that several times. So
I love it. I love it. We definitely gonna look into those. As you know, we love dropping different audiobooks and different literature in our Wealth Vault inside our Discord. So if you live with us, or if you tune in to the recap, make sure you guys join our Discord. We have a bunch of gems that we drop every single week. We will be dropping those books inside the Discord. I think it's super important for us to learn from others, and like you said, remain a student to the game for sure. So real quick, you're clearly an authority, but I found that, even the best experts, often have parts in their own business that still rely too much on them. So I'm curious, what's the most friction showing up for you right now?
yeah, no, that definitely resonates. For me, I tend to fall into that trap of trying to do it myself, try to do everything myself, and so wearing multiple hats, and not delegating effectively can sometimes sneak up on me. But luckily, we live in an exciting time now with some with new innovations in the AI world, with all kinds of tools, and whether that's back office or with marketing, or from a creative standpoint as well. And so but the trick there is, you got to pick one tool and really master it, because there are so many, right? And it can also become a time trap, right? Trying every little latest tool, right? Trying this, trying that, and the next thing you know, you're not working on your business. You're just playing around with with software.
No, I totally agree. Um, Sometimes I can find myself doing that because AI is just. I love AI. As an AI expert, I definitely play around with a lot of tools. But I think you're definitely right. You have to master, a tool at a time. Speaking of AI, I'm glad you brought that up. What's one tool that you're using right now that's really helping you out?
Oh, my favorite is it's a platform called Orchids, and I mentioned this one because I don't hear anybody talking about it. There's so many good ones. Like Notebook LM from Google is really 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 powerful. But Orchids app, uh, that is I guess you'd call it a vibe coding platform, but it's plugged into multiple of the latest models, whether that's from Claude, Gemini or ChatGPT. It can select from all of them. It has a built-in agent and chat bot as well. And so what you can literally do is describe what you want to build, whether that's a website, whether that's an app, whether that's really just anything that can be coded, and you can describe it. It will build that within its own interface, and then you can deploy that as well, through via website or physical app. So really exciting there. Even if it's just for website building. I mean, we'll if we have if we take a look, maybe later we can take a look at my website, and that was 100% made using the Orchids platform. With just my kind of guidance and direction.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, let's actually do that. Let's share. If you could share your screen, I
Yeah.
would love to check out your website and for you to give a little walkthrough on. Um, let's see.
Let me know when you can see it. Is that showing up?
Yeah, hold on one second. One second. Let me test the audio because I know before we was having trouble with them hearing while the screen sharing was going on. Let's do a mic check real quick.
Can you hear me? Hello, hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We good to go. All right, you can go ahead and give us a walkthrough.
Perfect. So this is the homepage right here. This is my website, growinnerouter.com. And let's see. Yeah. So stop renting money, start owning the system. This is, again, all of this I built using that platform, Orchids. And we'll scroll down here. Right. So the idea is learn how to become your own banker using cash value insurance, generating compound yield, and designing a life of financial sovereignty. And there's a little form here where anyone puts in their name and email address. They get the build your own bank blueprint. We can also go over that here in just a minute as well, if you'd like. Kind of walk you through that. But here, yeah, so talks about traditional banks profit from the spread. They take your money, they earn the interest and pay 0.5%, right? Charge you 7 if you want to take out a loan. And so the idea is that we want to become our own banker and be able to capitalize on that arbitrage ourselves. And we do that through infinite banking, DeFi yield, which we'll go over in that blueprint, and of course AI automation. Work with conscious entrepreneurs, savvy investors, freedom seekers, innovators, and change makers. And so, yeah, what we do is there's 3 key steps. First, we map it all out together, right? Build that kind of map, that blueprint, and then design it, and according to their vision and their mission and goals, and then activate it and automate it, so it's earning yield and as we sleep. Money working for us, not just us for it, right? And so yeah, this the philosophy behind Grow.io is nature doesn't extract, it circulates, and that way energy flows, it compounds, creates abundance without depletion, right? It's just self-regenerative, and our framework really mirrors that intelligence. So we have that capital working. Your capital works for you, generates that yield in multiple systems, And that way it gives you the freedom to focus on what matters, continuing to create, to innovate, connect with like-minded individuals, and really build that world that we want to see out there. And then we've got a little bio section there. These are the services here. It's got a learning. So we've got articles here. It's kind of like a blog post section. And then we've got some calculators, retirement income projection tools, that sort of thing, downloadable resources, business owner's insurance guide, estate planning checklist, all kinds of good stuff here. And so that's basically it. That's the website there. Delano, you want me to share the blueprint? We can go through that real quick, that PDF.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Real quick, if you are live with this, when I tell you dropping too many gems, you guys have to blow up the chat. You got to make sure you guys follow Brandon for sure. And yeah, man, blow up that chat, put the fire signs in the chat. And if you have any questions or concerns, make sure you guys post that in the chat as well. Maybe we can answer some of those questions live for you guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is the build your own bank blueprint, right? So this is the step-by-step. This kind of goes through that whole methodology and how we get this set up for ourselves here. And so, as I mentioned, basically phase one is we design this very specific form of whole life cash value insurance, and that's the storage tank for our capital, right? It's a dividend paying account there. And then phase two is we leverage the funds in that account in order to deploy into yield opportunities, right? And so, whether that's, like I mentioned earlier, whether that's real estate, your business, or precious metals, gold, or maybe other investments, and then also decentralized finance, which is another way that we can cut out the banking middleman and capture all of that yield ourselves. And we'll dig into that a little bit more here. So these are the key benefits. You maintain control. You control, choose when and how the capital is deployed. You can have access to those funds within a week. And that gives you an advantage. We talked earlier about the opportunity fund. If you see a distressed asset, if you're into real estate and you see a property that's got your name on it, or a business that's looking to sell fast, most people in that situation have to go through a bank underwriting process, right, to get approved for financing. And in this world, when you're the own banker, you can act with the swiftness of a sovereign to where you bypass that underwriting process, and you can really skip to the head of the line, and the early bird gets the worm. And so having that access to that liquidity when it matters most without interrupting the compound growth. And then let's see, we've got, think of the policy as a protected vault, and you're the own banker. So you put the money in there to work without spending it, earning the yield while the balance keeps compounding. So here's phase one in detail, building your actual bank. We talked about this a little bit earlier. High early liquidity, low base premium, so low amount of life insurance. It's not the purpose for this policy. This is really all about the liquidity tank. And then phase two, borrow and deploy. So borrowing against our own cash allows that money to stay invested inside the policy, compounding, earning yield. And then we deploy those funds, repay the loan down, so repay ourselves. That's the discipline part. Is if we're going to become our own banker, you can think of this as a line of credit. The sooner that we can repay down that line of credit, the sooner we can rinse and repeat the process, right, and restore loan capacity and find that next opportunity. And the cool thing about this is that the net cost to borrow is typically around 1%, sometimes as low as zero, because you're earning a dividend on the nest egg, which offsets the majority of the loan cost. And so this is a world where we can have a net cost to borrow of, say, 1%. So as long as the opportunity can can yield us greater than that, then we capture the arbitrage, right? And so just to see a little bit more of what that looks like, here's an example using decentralized finance. So anyone that's familiar with the cryptocurrency world or digital asset space, you've probably heard the term DeFi. It stands for decentralized finance. And this is um, a trustless platform, right? With typically an app where you have, instead of an account, you have your own self-custody wallet that you're in control of as the banker, and able to capture even conservatively yields on cash, right? So stable coins are basically tokenized cash on the blockchain, so secured on the blockchain, transparent, right? Fully audited, and able to generate a yield between 7 and as high as 18%, right? And so when you think about what money markets are paying nowadays, around 3%, CDs kind of the same. You know, can you imagine the game-changing difference between earning 3 or 4% and earning close, to 10% on average? Again, without any volatility in the markets, this is just return on cash. Again, we want it to mimic a high yield savings account, just to outperform it. And then other options, like I mentioned, you could allocate some of those funds or that liquidity towards other investments, right? Gold, real estate, actual cryptocurrency if you're in that world, or stocks. Um, we've got the visual map here. So this is really good because it shows that all money flows through the funnel, through this funnel, right? Think of it, this is a filter. So as cash flow comes in through windfalls, income, profits, it goes into your policy, the personal bank, right? The private bank. We take the policy loan, we have access to the funds, we deploy those funds into opportunities. We have those opportunities generate yield and more cash flow. We use that excess yield and cash flow to repay the loan down, right? Because if our cost to borrow is 1% and we're earning 10, right, then we have 9% profit. We capture the arbitrage. This is what the banks do. This is why banks, have been around for hundreds of years. It's a very profitable model, and that's what we want to recreate here. Here's a little illustration. Goes through an example there about starting with $100,000. We've got a dividend of 5.5%. You can kind of see how after year one what that looks like here. So yeah, you're building a system where you can have your cake and eat it too. That's really the idea. We want our money to do multiple jobs. Compound interest, finding new opportunities, right? Using that leverage, creating a flywheel where every time we go through this cycle, right, every spin on that wheel creates more financial independence, right? More profit, more revenue for scaling, and then you factor that in over the course of several years, and like I said, it's a game changer. So that's it in a nutshell. That's the blueprint right there. So anyone that I work with, we go through this, one-on-one, and to kind of talk through how they can start to set up their own blueprint, how they can put their numbers, into this model and see if it makes sense.
Man, man. We're about to make a lot of people rich just off of that alone, for sure. And just not even just rich, financially free. That's really the goal, to get out of this hustle culture. And like you said, make your money work for you at the end of the day instead of us, working for the money. So yeah, that's a game changer right there.
It's even better when you're doing both. When we're working for the money's working for us, and it's all in harmony. Yeah.
Hey, you cannot beat it. You cannot beat it for sure. So real quick, I always like to say, we don't just watch videos here. I always encourage our listeners and our audience, of course, our members, to take action at the end of the day. So what's one mogul move our audience needs to complete in the next 24 hours to see a result?
Yeah, I would say participate. I've got a financial sovereignty diagnostic. It's like a little scorecard, and so that's something that I can send you all the link for. But it's a diagnostic tool that gives you a score, right? How financially sovereign are you on a scale of of 1 to 40, and so, or 1 to 10, excuse me. And from there, it kind of identifies, what are some ways in which we can boost your own financial sovereignty or put you on the path to that. And so that diagnostic tool right there, just if nothing else, gives you some clarity on which direction you might want to start considering moving towards. And so yeah, based on that, I'd say take the financial sovereignty quiz, and really, dig into your own, your dig under your own hood and find out, where the leaks are, right?
Most definitely. Please post that in the Discord as soon as possible. Post it in the wealth vault for me as soon as you can, because we definitely need that, and our members definitely need it for sure, for sure. And you heard them, man. Let's get to work. Let's get those audits filled out immediately. And let's see where you guys are at. At the end of the day, let's, it's all about, becoming sovereign and being sovereign in the system. So I love it. I appreciate you, Brandon, so much for just dropping so many jewels today. Real quick, man, let the people know, if they're not in the Discord, where else can they find you? And then give the mob a quick shout out.
Absolutely, yeah. So, best place to find me is my website, growinnerouter.com. And from there, you have links to socials. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram at Brandon_Belk. I've got some content there, lots of content there that kind of goes behind the scenes on a lot of these concepts in a really digestible way. And so, yeah, look forward to connecting with you all.
I love it. I love it. Let's do a quick shout out for the mob, real quick. Go ahead and give us a quick shout out, Brandon.
Oh, hey, yeah, absolutely. So shout out to the mob community. Appreciate y'all having me. Appreciate, just I'm really impressed with the structure that's in place with this platform, with this community. It's really inspiring. I mean, Delano, everything that you've done to set up this interview, and all the other ones that you guys provide, it really is inspiring and showcasing how, having that a solid foundation and a solid framework allows you to do so much and reach so many people. So keep doing what you're doing, and I'm happy to be a witness and a part of it.
Hey, I appreciate you so much, Brandon. You my family now, so we definitely locked in, and we're gonna make sure that our community stay connected, and and we're gonna together. I know we're gonna make a lot of people. We're gonna free a lot of people. Pull them out that matrix, pull them, free them from the system that we in, and I'm super excited about that. But yeah, man, you guys heard them. Let's get to work. I always say, at the end of the day, information without execution is just a hobby, you guys. So I don't want you guys to just, take these lives for granted. I don't want you guys to just watch a video. I want you guys to make sure that you continue on, not just taking notes, but actually, putting together and putting some action behind those notes. And hey, if you need some help, don't feel ashamed. Ask for some help. Reach out to the mob family if you're not already a member. Reach out to us, reach out to Brandon, and you don't have to do it alone anymore. So at the end of the day, we want to make sure you guys are scaling and building actual assets at the end of the day. Speaking of that, real quick, if you haven't gotten a chance to yet, make sure you guys join our Discord. We would love to have you. We have a community full of like-minded individuals at the end of the day. And make sure you guys take our business funding readiness audit. Let's see where you guys are at. Brandon is actually going to drop his link in our Discord as well. So definitely make sure you guys join the Discord so you can actually get access to his link as well. And so we can actually get you guys sovereign. And also make sure you guys check out Business Credit Ain't Scary, the guide to get in the bag legally. We have a lot of great gems in this ebook for you guys. And like I said, it's all about just taking action, and making sure that you guys hold yourself accountable. And also, like I said, you don't have to do it alone. If you need an accountability partner, if you need a mentor, advisor, That's what the mob is here for as well. And we have to utilize each other. At the end of the day, we got to move as a village. So, man, it's just been another blessed brainstorming session, you guys. Peace and blessings. Until next time, I'll talk to you guys shortly. You guys continue on being great. You guys continue on being Moguls.